Daniel pressed his coffee cup to his lips as he stepped onto the subway platform. The air smelled of cold concrete and hot drinks. His black backpack felt heavy on his shoulders, but he did not mind. He liked the weight. He reminded him that he carried more than just work papers. He carried kindness and a wish to help. Around him, people hurried past in dark coats, their eyes fixed on phones or the glowing signs above the tracks. He had just enough time to check his watch before the train roared in. As the doors slid open, Daniel saw her. She stood alone by the turnstiles, her shoulders shaking. A single tear rolled down her cheek, leaving a glistening trail on her pale skin. Her hair fell in loose curls around her face, and she hugged a small purse to her chest. Looked lost. He had never seen her before, but in that moment he felt a pull in his chest. He knew she needed help. The crowd pressed around them, but Daniel moved closer. He felt his heart beat faster. He did not usually speak to strangers, but he could not ignore someone in pain. I offered her his phone without a word. His hand came out of his coat pocket, screen glowing. He said gently, "You can use my phone if you need to call someone." She looked up, startled. Her eyes were red and her lips trembled. She reached for the phone with one shaky hand. The other hand clutched her purse strap. For a moment, she just stared at him, as if surprised that someone cared. Then she nodded and pressed the green button. Daniel stepped back, giving her space. She tapped numbers with trembling fingers. Her thumb hovered over the call button, and then her finger pressed down. The phone rang once, twice, her head bowed lower. Daniel stood beside her, heart aching. After a short moment, she hit the end key and dropped her chin into her palms. The phone felt heavy in his hand, as if it carried her sadness. He stayed quiet, letting her cry. The harsh station lights cast long shadows. The announcer's voice echoed overhead, calling out the next train in a tinny tone. Daniel watched her lips move, whispering into his phone. He wondered who she was trying to call. He wanted to reach out to ask what happened, but he hesitated. He did not want to push too hard. When she finally looked up, she wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. My phone died," she said in a small voice. Her eyes searched his face. "I needed to call someone, but I have no way." Her voice sounded fragile, like glass. Daniel swallowed, feeling a mix of concern and determination. He would not let her stand here alone. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a water bottle. He offered it to her. "Do you want some water?" he asked softly. She blinked at him, surprised. Then she accepted the bottle with both hands, her fingers shaking. She lifted it to her lips and took a careful sip. He waited until she finished a few more quick gulps before speaking again. "You okay?" he asked, keeping his tone gentle. "Ain't." The rush of the arriving train made his words echo. She set the bottle on the edge of a nearby bench and shook her head. "No," she whispered. Her voice was barely above the hum of the crowd. "I'm lost. I don't know where to go." She looked around at the sea of strangers, as if hoping to see someone she knew. Daniel followed her gaze, but all he saw were people focused on their own lives. He pointed to a metal bench against the wall. "You can sit here if you like," he said. He held his backpack in front of him, making a small shield between them and the busy station. She hesitated, biting her lower lip. He gave a small nod. "It's okay. Take your time." Finally, she let herself slide down onto the bench. She clutched her purse in her lap, pulling it close. Daniel placed his backpack on the floor and sat down a few feet away from her. He kept his voice low, kind. "My name is Daniel," he said. "What's your name?" She lifted her head and met his eyes. For a moment, she did not speak. Then she whispered, "Mia." He nodded, feeling relief that she would talk. "Mia, I'm sorry you're upset. Do you want to tell me what happened?" She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. The station sound seemed to fade around them. After a quiet moment, Mia shook her head again. "I can't," she said. I just needed to leave. I had to get away." She glanced at the flashing sign above the tracks. The next train would arrive soon. Daniel leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "God, you don't have to tell me everything," he said, "but I want to help if I can. You're not alone here." Mia looked at him, her eyes glistening. It was the first time she let him see the fear in them, The sound of a train horn grew louder. A wave of wind rushed past as the doors opened a few feet away. People jostled past Daniel and Mia, hurrying to board. He stared at Mia's pale face. He felt a strong pull to keep her safe. Mia's hand trembled as she reached into her purse and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a large house with tall windows and manicured gardens. She held it closely to her heart. Daniel noticed her gaze was fixed on the photograph. He followed her eyes. "Is that where you're from?" he asked quietly. "Yes." Fingers curled around the edges of the photo. She shook her head slowly. "It's where I ran away from," she whispered. Daniel's heart tightened. He did not know who she was or why she fled, but he felt a fierce need to protect her. He bent to pick up his water bottle and held it out to her one more time. "Here," he said softly. "Take this, and please stay seated. I'll figure this out." Mia gave him a small nod and sipped again. Daniel watched the train doors close and the car slide away. He turned back to Mia and offered a gentle smile. The air felt colder now that the train had passed, but he did not shiver. His mind raced with questions: how to help her, whom to call, where she could go. He could not leave her here alone. He took a deep breath and met Mia's eyes. She looked at him with a mix of fear and... Daniel guided Mia onto the crowded train with a soft word and a steady hand. The doors hissed shut behind them, and the car filled with the hum of moving rails. Mia clutched her small purse, her knuckles pale, and Daniel moved close enough to offer calm without crowding her. He had never been so quiet on a subway ride before. Normally he read news on his phone or stared out the window, but today none of that mattered. His thoughts were wrapped around Mia's fear and the steady rise of his own resolve to help her. As the train picked up speed, Daniel turned slightly to her. "Can I ask your name?" he said gently. The question hung in the air longer than he expected. Mia's eyes darted to the floor. She tucked a loose curl behind her ear, and her voice came out in a whisper. Mia, she spoke as if she had forgotten how. Daniel smiled, relieved to have something real to call her. "Nice to meet you, Mia. I'm Daniel." He offered his hand, and she shook it, her fingers cool and trembling. A pause stretched between them. The train rattled through the tunnel, lights flickering overhead. Daniel felt the weight of silence. He did not want to rush her, but he also wanted to break the ice. "It's okay if you don't want to say much," he told her. "But if you ever feel like talking, I'm here." Mia blinked at him. Her eyes were deep pools of worry. She took a breath and looked at the window reflection. Daniel watched her, and he sensed she was gathering courage. After a long moment, Mia turned back. "I ran away this morning," she said, voice low. Her words floated in the clatter of the train. Daniel's chest tightened, nodded, encouraging her to continue if she wished. Mia frowned, biting her lip. "I left a big house," she whispered. "I woke up, and I knew I had to leave. I didn't want to do what my family planned for me." Daniel listened as the train slowed for the next stop. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the same water bottle. He handed it to her again. Mia took it gratefully, tipping the cool plastic to her lips. Daniel leaned closer, mindful of the other passengers. "My sister ran away when she was 17, he said softly. She felt trapped at home too. She hated the rules and longed for freedom. I didn't know where she went, but I worried every day. After 2 nights, she called me from a friend's place. She was safe." He paused, meeting Mia's gaze. "You won't be alone. I will help you."
Ice.
Mia's eyes filled with tears again. But this time they were softer, as if comfort had found a small place in her chest. She nodded, and for the first time, it felt like she believed him. The train came to a stop, and Daniel stood. He offered Mia his arm, and she slipped her hand into his. The gesture was small but powerful. Together, they stepped off the train and onto a quieter platform. Overhead announcements faded into the background as they walked side by side. Daniel kept his hand lightly on her back, guiding without forcing. Mia leaned on him a little, and he could feel her tensions slowly loosen. They climbed the stairs and emerged into a bright station hall. The light felt warm, almost like daylight after a long night. Mia blinked as if seeing the world fresh. Daniel led her to a ticket machine and bought 2 single-ride tickets. He handed 1 ticket to Mia and kept 1. "This will take us to a place with a bench and some phone booths," he said. Mia studied the ticket and nodded. She tucked it into her pocket, then lifted her head to look at Daniel. As they waited for the next train, Daniel tried to keep things light. "I once tried to bake muffins in my small kitchen," he began. "It was a disaster. Flour everywhere, smoke alarms screaming. My neighbor came knocking to check if my apartment was on fire." Mia managed a small laugh. Her shoulders dropped. "A fraction." Daniel smiled at her relief. He continued, "I ended up with 1 sad muffin that tasted like burnt toast, but my neighbor and I ended up sharing it with tea. We laughed the whole time." Mia's laugh turned into a soft chuckle, and she cradled the water bottle between her knees. "That's funny," she said. "I burned toast once and blamed my brother. I thought he left crumbs in the toaster." Daniel grinned.
"Hey, we
"All need a little fun in dark times." He paused, then asked quietly, "Do you have someone you want to call once we get there?" Mia hesitated. She reached into her purse and pulled out a slim card with a family crest. I thought of calling my brother," she said, "but he doesn't answer." She looked at the card inside. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "That's okay. We'll figure something out." He guided her onto the arriving train. The doors closed behind them, and the car was almost empty. They found seats facing each other. Mia kept the crest card in her hand, turning it over gently. Daniel looked out the window at the passing station names. Each one slipped behind them as the train carried them forward. After a few moments, he asked, "Where do you think you'd like to stay for the night? Is there a friend's place or a shelter you know about?" Mia's eyes filled with worry again. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I could go back home once I had time to think, but I'm scared to go back." Daniel's heart ached for her. He placed a hand over hers on the seat. "You won't have to go back until you're ready," he said. "And I'll help you find a safe place to stay." Mia's grip on his hand tightened. A gentle connection seemed to form between them on that slow ride. The train slowed for their stop. Daniel helped Mia stand, and they stepped off onto a wide platform. Mia looked around, her brow furrowed. Daniel offered his arm again, and she accepted. Together they followed the signs toward the station exit, where a small cafe and a row of payphones awaited. Outside the air was cooler. A soft breeze rustled leaves in a planter near the doors. Daniel paused and took a deep breath. "There," he said, pointing to the cafe window. "They serve tea and soup late. We can sit, have something warm, and work out a plan." Mia nodded, her eyes hopeful for the first time. They walked through the door together, finding a quiet table in the back. Mia let out a breath and sat down, her shoulders relaxing more. Daniel ordered tea for both of them, and Mia watched him with gratitude. When he returned with 2 steaming cups, he slid one toward her. She wrapped her hands around it, letting the warmth spread through her fingers. Daniel sat across from her. "We can call someone from here," he said, "or we can look up a safe place to stay tonight. Whatever you feel comfortable with." Mia sipped her tea and looked at Daniel's kind face. She felt less alone then. She had in hours. As the city lights shimmered through the cafe window, Mia found her voice again. She began to share small details, what she liked about the park near her home. The sound of her cat's purr in the morning. The taste of her favorite jam on toast. Daniel listened, asking gentle questions, making notes in his mind. The ordinary details wove a picture of a life she loved, but had fled from. By the time their cups were empty, Mia sat straighter. She met Daniel's eyes and gave him a small, confident nod. He smiled back, proud of her strength. He picked up his phone and began searching for a nearby shelter and a helpline for young people in trouble. Mia watched him, hope glimmering. The kindness of a stranger had turned her darkest, morning into a chance for a new path. Daniel felt that same hope rising in his chest. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Daniel sat beside Mia under the soft glow of the cafe lights. The steam from their tea curled upward like tiny white ribbons. Mia cradled her cup as if it were a lifeline. Daniel watched her, ready to help. He pulled out his phone and opened a notes app. He typed, "Find safe place" at the top. Then he handed the phone to Mia. "Do you want to search yourself?" he asked gently. Mia shook her head. "Not yet," she whispered. "I need to think." Daniel closed the phone and set it on the table. He leaned back, giving Mia space. Outside, the last of the day's sunlight slipped behind tall buildings. The street lamps flickered on, and rain began to patter against the cafe window. Mia watched the drops race each other downward. Daniel saw the worry in her eyes. He reached quietly into his coat pocket and pulled out the slim card with the family crest. He placed it on the table between them. Mia looked at the card, and her hands trembled when she reached for it. The crest was a golden lion on a dark shield. Daniel studied the symbol. "This looks important," he said. "It must be your family's mark." Mia's lips tightened. She glanced at Daniel, unsure. He offered her a small, reassuring smile. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said, "but if it helps, I can listen." Mia nodded slowly. She held the card close to her heart and took a deep breath. "I didn't want anyone to know who I am," Mia began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I come from a very rich family. My father owns a big company. Our name means money and power." She looked away, her cheeks pink. Daniel gently reached out and placed his hand over hers on the table. "That must feel heavy," he said softly. Mia's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she admitted. "I ran because I felt trapped." The rain tapped a steady rhythm on the window like a quiet drum. Daniel squeezed Mia's hand. "I understand wanting freedom," he said, "but running alone can be dangerous." Mia met his eyes. "I didn't know where to go," she said. "I thought I could figure it out on my own." Daniel nodded. "You're brave," he said, "but you don't have to be alone anymore." Mia swallowed hard. She studied Daniel's kind face. Then she took another deep breath and began to speak. "Overheard my parents talking last night," Mia said, voice shaking. "They plan to send me far away to marry someone I've never met. They said it would be good for the family." She brushed a stray curl from her forehead. "I love my family, but I don't want that life." Daniel watched her, heart aching. He folded his hands in his lap. "You deserve to choose your own path," he said. Mia's eyes flickered with hope. She leaned forward, gripping the crest card again. "I thought I could hide for a few hours, then go back and talk to them," she said. "But when I got here, I panicked. My phone died. I felt stuck." Her voice broke, and she closed her eyes. Daniel reached for his tea and took a small sip. He let the warmth settle in his chest before he spoke. "Okay," he said. "We have two things to do. First, find you a safe place to stay tonight. Second, figure out how you want to talk to your family." Mia opened her eyes. She looked at Daniel with tears shining like small stars. She nodded, relief and fear mixing on her face. Daniel called the helpline he had looked up earlier, spoke quietly, explaining Mia's situation. The person on the other end promised to connect them to a shelter that welcomed young people in trouble. Daniel wrote down the address and phone number. He handed the paper to Mia. "This place is not far," he said. "They will keep you safe until you decide what to do next." Mia folded the paper and tucked it into her purse. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "You deserve help and respect." A period of quiet settled between them. Mia sipped her tea, then set the cup down. She looked at Daniel with a small, shy smile. "How did you become so kind?" she asked. Daniel shrugged and grinned. "My mom taught me," he said. "She always said, be the person you needed when you were younger." Mia's smile widened. Daniel checked his watch. The cafe was about to close. He stood and offered Mia his hand. She took it. They left the warm room and stepped into the cool night. The rain had eased to a gentle drizzle. The street smelled fresh and clean. Daniel led Mia down the quiet block toward the shelter. Neon signs flickered above closed shops. The city felt softer at this hour, as if it knew to give them a moment. As they walked, Mia clutched her purse. Daniel kept his other hand in his coat pocket, feeling the reassuring shape of his phone. He thought about how much her story reminded him of a novel he once read, someone finding their way through darkness with the help of another soul. But this was real, and Mia was real. He felt honored to stand by her. They reached a small brick building with a blue sign that read Safe Harbor Youth Shelter. A friendly woman at the desk greeted them. Daniel explained Mia's situation. The woman nodded kindly and handed Mia some forms to fill out. Mia's hands shook as she signed the papers. Daniel stood by, offering quiet support. When Mia finished, the woman handed her a blanket and a small key. Mia turned to Daniel. I don't know how to thank you, she said. Daniel shook his head. You don't have to, he said. I'm glad you're safe. Mia stepped forward and gave him a quick hug. It felt unexpected but right. Daniel patted her back gently. Inside, the shelter was warm and bright, with narrow beds and soft lights. Other young people rested or whispered softly. Mia followed the woman down a hallway to a small room with a single bed. She set down her purse and looked at Daniel. Will you? Will you stay until I'm settled? She asked. Daniel smiled. Of course, he said. He sat in a plastic chair by the door. Mia climbed onto the bed and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. She looked so small, but also so strong. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You'll be safe here, he said. Tomorrow, we can talk about contacting your family, or maybe talking to a counselor. Mia nodded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. Daniel checked his phone for messages. But there were none, just a quiet night waiting. He turned back to Mia. Get some rest, he said softly. I'll be right outside if you need me. Mia smiled tiredly and closed her eyes. Daniel stood and quietly left the room. In the hallway, he paused and took a deep breath. He felt a warm glow in his chest. Out on the street, the rain had stopped. The world was quiet except for distant car tires on wet pavement. Daniel looked up at the dark sky and felt hope. He had helped a frightened girl find safety. He thought of her parents. He hoped they would understand her choice when they found her. Daniel walked home under the streetlights. His backpack felt lighter now. He carried a sense of peace, knowing he had done the right thing. He thought of Mia sleeping warmly in the shelter, safe at last. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, he allowed himself to rest. He smiled to the empty street and whispered, "Good night, Mia." As he turned the corner toward his apartment, Daniel felt a change inside him. A simple act, lending his phone, had led to a journey he never expected. What dawn ready? For whatever came next, knowing that kindness can light the darkest paths. Daniel woke before the sun. He sat up on the chair outside Mia's room at the shelter and rubbed his eyes. The quiet hallway smelled faintly of laundry and fresh paint. He yawned and stretched, careful not to wake anyone. He thought of Mia sleeping. Safely behind that door, he felt proud and a little worried. He hoped her family would respect her choice and let her breathe. After a moment, he stood and walked to the desk where a kind woman had been organizing forms the night before. The woman smiled when she saw him. "She's asleep," the woman whispered. "You can check on her if you like." Daniel thanked her and left the desk quietly. He knocked softly on Mia's door. "Mia," said. After a moment, the door opened a crack. Mia's eyes peered out. She still looked tired, but more at ease than the night before. "Morning," Daniel said quietly. "How are you feeling?" Mia pushed the door open and slipped into the hallway. "Better," she said, her voice soft but calm. She wore a simple blue dress that the shelter had given her. Daniel smiled. "I thought we could get some breakfast," he said. "Do you want coffee or tea?" Mia nodded. "Tea, please," she said. They walked together to the small kitchen area, where a bowl of fruit and boxes of cereal waited. Mia chose an apple and a yogurt, and Daniel poured them each a cup of tea. They carried their breakfast back to the quiet hallway. Daniel set the tray on a folding table, and they sat on plastic chairs. The sun had not yet risen fully, but pale. Light filtered in through the windows. They ate in silence for a few moments, listening to the hum of the shelter waking up. Then Mia asked, "Did my father call the shelter?" Daniel glanced at his phone. "Yes," he said. "He called early. They told him you were here, but they were waiting for you to rest before letting anyone see you." Mia's face grew tense. She picked at her yogurt. "Think he's coming," she whispered. Daniel reached across the table and placed a hand over hers. "I'll stay with you, no matter what," he said. Mia looked at him gratefully. Thank you, she said. She took a deep breath and stood. I should get ready, she said. Daniel stood too. I'll wait outside, he said. Take your time. Mia nodded and walked back into the room. Daniel gathered the tray and washed the dishes in the small sink. He felt his heart beat faster. A short while later, Mia emerged. She looked pale, but composed. Daniel gave her a reassuring smile. Ready? He asked. She nodded and took his arm as they walked toward the shelter's front door. As they stepped outside, a black car idled under the shelter sign. A tall man in a dark suit stood by the passenger door. Daniel's stomach tightened. That must be her father. They approached, and the man turned. His eyes were cool and serious. Mia stopped and let go of Daniel's arm. Father, she said. Quietly, the man folded his arms and studied Mia. Daniel stood a step behind her. The man's eyes flicked to Daniel. He raised an eyebrow as if questioning who this stranger was. Mia spoke first. I'm safe, she said, her voice steady. I needed help. This shelter kept me safe last night. Her father's gaze softened slightly at her calm tone. Then he looked at Daniel. And you are? He asked. Daniel took a breath and stepped forward. I'm Daniel, he said. I found Mia in the subway station yesterday morning. I lent her my phone and I stayed with her until she was safe here. I want to help her, nothing more. The father's eyes narrowed. You loaned her your phone? He repeated. Daniel nodded. I believe she deserved help. I wanted to make sure she wasn't alone. The father's stern expression shifted. He glanced at Mia, then at Daniel. Mia moved closer to her father. I ran away because I didn't want to marry someone my parents chose for me, she said softly. Her father's jaw tightened. You should have called me, he said. I would never have forced you against your will. Mia shook her head. I was scared. I didn't know how you'd react. The father's eyes softened with something like regret. He looked at the black car, then at the shelter door. I came as soon as I could, he said, his voice low. I'm sorry it took me so long. Mia bit her lip and blinked back tears. Daniel watched them, feeling protective of both. He wanted them to understand each other. The father turned to Daniel. Thank you for keeping her safe, he said. I appreciate it. Daniel nodded. I'm glad she's back with someone who cares. The father paused, then offered his hand to Daniel. Daniel shook it. The handshake was firm but respectful. Mia's father placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Are you okay? He asked. Mia looked up at him. Her eyes were bright with relief. I am now, she said. The father guided her toward the car. Daniel took a step forward. Do you need a ride? He offered. Mia's father shook his head. I'll take her home, he said. He closed the car door and walked around to the driver's side. Mia glanced back at Daniel. She gave him a small, grateful smile. Daniel nodded and gave her a thumbs up. The father drove away slowly, with Mia in the passenger seat. Daniel watched until the car turned the corner. Then he exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the cool morning air fill his lungs. He thought of Mia safe with her father. He hoped they would talk and understand each other. He felt glad he had been there for her. He reached into his pocket and took out a small piece of paper where he had written his phone number. He folded it neatly and tucked it into the shelter's mailbox with a note. If you or your daughter need me, call any time. Daniel walked back to his apartment feeling lighter than he had in days. He thought of Mia at home, maybe talking with her family. He imagined them finding a new way to communicate. He smiled, knowing that a simple act lending his phone had led to healing. He felt ready to face his own day, carrying the quiet joy of helping someone find her way back. Daniel woke early with the sun just peeking over the rooftops. He felt a lightness in his chest, as if a long-held worry had lifted. The events of the past days played through his mind, meeting Mia on that cold station platform, lending her his phone, the subway ride, the cafe conversation, the shelter, and finally, her father's arrival. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat by his window, watching the city come to life. He wondered how Mia was doing, and if she had slept well in her own bed for the first time in days. Later that morning, Daniel decided to go for a walk through the park, where he often found peace. The paths were lined with blooming flowers and gentle songbirds. He carried a small notebook in his pocket, the same one he used for work notes and grocery lists. But today he wrote something new. Check on Mia. He paused and smiled at the simple reminder. He had given Mia his number before she left the shelter. He hoped she would feel free to call if she needed anything. As he strolled beneath the tall trees, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a message from Mia. "Good morning, Daniel. Thank you again. I'm home and safe. I'd like to talk if you have time." His heart warmed. He typed back, "I'm free this afternoon. Let me know when and where." He sent the message and continued his walk, feeling a gentle excitement he hadn't known in a long time. By midday, the sky was clear and bright. Daniel met Mia at a small cafe near her home. She waited at an outside table, sipping tea and smiling shyly when she saw him approach. She looked more like herself, now calm and composed. Daniel sat down across from her and greeted her warmly. "I'm glad to see you," he said. Mia's smile widened. "And I'm glad to be back," she replied. They ordered lunch and talked easily as the waiter brought plates of soup and salad. Mia told him about the night at home. Her father had sat with her in the living room, listening to her fears and hopes. He apologized for not understanding how much pressure she felt. Mother joined them later, and Mia shared her dream of finishing school and studying art, something her parents had never known she loved. They promised to support her choices. Daniel listened, nodding. He felt proud of Mia for finding her voice. She described the relief of sleeping in her own bed, the soft sheets, and familiar pillow. She texted her best friend to say she was okay. And they chatted until late, laughter spilling over the screen. Admitted she had been too scared to call him that night, but knew she could now. Daniel reached into his pocket and handed her a small gift, a sketchbook and pencils. "For your art," he said. Mia gasped and held the book close. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's perfect." After lunch, they walked through the nearby gardens. The air smelled of jasmine and fresh grass. Mia pointed out the flowers she remembered from childhood visits with her grandmother. Daniel admired how she found beauty in the simplest things. He asked about her school plans. Mia's eyes lit up as she described the art program she hoped to join at the local community college. She had already applied and was waiting for a reply. A week later, Mia called with good news. She was accepted into the program. Daniel celebrated, with her over the phone, cheering as if he had won the acceptance himself. Mia laughed, her joy bright and pure. She told him she had an orientation meeting next week and asked if he would come. He agreed immediately. On the day of orientation, Daniel met Mia at the college campus. The building was modern, with tall windows and colorful posters of student artwork on the walls. Mia introduced him to her new classmates, who greeted Daniel kindly when she said, "This is Daniel. He helped me when I needed it most." He felt shy but happy to be part of her world for a moment. Mia's professor welcomed her to the program and asked her to share why she chose art. Mia spoke confidently, crediting a stranger's kindness for giving her the courage to pursue her passion. She told the class how a simple act, lending a phone, had sparked a journey of self-discovery. Daniel watched with pride as she spoke, her voice clear and steady. After the orientation, Mia and Daniel walked through a courtyard filled with student sculptures. They sat on a bench under a flowering tree. Mia took out her new sketchbook and pencils. She flipped to a blank page and looked at Daniel. "Would you mind sitting still for a moment?" she asked with a playful grin. Daniel laughed. "I'll try," he said. He sat straight and offered a warm smile. Mia sketched quietly, her pencil dancing across the page. Daniel watched her face, soft with concentration. When she finished, she showed him the drawing, a simple portrait of him, gentle eyes, and a kind expression. He touched the paper lightly. "It's wonderful," he said. "You really captured me." Mia's cheeks flushed pink. "Thank you for being my first subject," she said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the breeze and the sound of rustling leaves. Then Mia grew serious. "I wanted to ask you something," she said. "I know I'm doing better, but I also know I still have work to do for myself and with my family. Would you help me? Maybe as a friend or just someone I can talk to." Daniel looked at her and felt honored. "Of course," he said. "I'll always be here." "For you." Over the next months, Daniel and Mia stayed in touch regularly. They met for coffee, visited art exhibits, and went on walks in the park. Each meeting was easy and warm, filled with laughter and honest conversation. Mia found strength in her creativity, and Daniel found purpose in supporting her growth. They celebrated small victories: Mia finishing her first sketchbook, Daniel starting a weekend class in creative writing. They grew as individuals and as friends. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a hill overlooking the city, Mia turned to Daniel. "I feel like a different person," she said. "I was so scared when I ran away. I thought I was alone, but I wasn't. You showed me kindness without asking for anything in return." Daniel smiled softly. "You taught me that helping someone can change both their life and yours," he replied. Mia nodded, her eyes bright. "Yes," she said. "I think we both found something we needed." Months turned into a year. Mia completed her art program and prepared for her first gallery show. She invited Daniel to the opening. The gallery was filled with her paintings, vivid landscapes, gentle portraits, colorful abstracts. Daniel walked through the exhibits, amazed by her talent and vision. He found her at the center of the room, speaking with guests, confident and proud. When the show ended, Mia found Daniel and hugged him. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said. Daniel laughed. "You did all the work," he replied. "I just encouraged you to keep going." Mia took his hand and led him outside to a quiet spot on the street. The night was cool, with stars bright in the sky. She held up a small card. "I made this for you," she said. It was an invitation, Daniel's story, a painting of him helping a tearful girl on a subway platform. The image was simple but powerful. Daniel was speechless. The painting showed him holding out his phone, his face warm and caring. He saw Mia in the background, her eyes full of fear and hope. He looked at Mia, tears in his own eyes. "I will treasure this always," he whispered. Mia smiled. "It's a reminder that kindness matters," she said. As they walked away from the gallery, Mia and Daniel talked about the future. Mia planned to continue her art and teach classes to young people who felt lost or alone. Daniel thought about ways to volunteer at shelters or help in community programs. They knew their paths would continue to cross as they both dedicated themselves to helping others. That night, Daniel returned home with a full heart. He hung the painting in his living room where he could see it each morning. It reminded him of how a small choice to lend his phone had grown into a friendship and a new life for Mia. He smiled as he turned off the lights, ready to rest. He knew the world could be a kinder place when people reached out without fear, and so a simple act of compassion began a journey that changed to lives forever. Daniel fell asleep with the memory of Mia's smile and the promise of more stories to come, stories of hope, renewal, and the power of kindness in a busy, bustling world.